readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Gwyn channel. Today, Will and I are going to do we're reversing to 2022, aren't we? We're going to be talking about what we read during the month of December, although that was so long ago. It was
a long time ago.
So last year, wasn't it? But we will be getting
You've been waiting
into
to say that joke, haven't you?
Yeah, I waited all year for it. I can keep going this all year. We'll be talking about December reads, what we enjoyed, what we loved, what we thought was brilliant. And that's it.
Very nice. Well, I haven't talked about this book since last year. And this is A Storm of Swords.
It's not as funny when someone else says it, is it? No.
Well, imagine how our viewers feel with both of us doing it.
Yeah,
I'll begin with A Storm of Swords, and I absolutely loved it. Book 3 of A Song of Ice and Fire, of course, by George R. R. Martin, kicking off with what is most well known now as A Game of Thrones.
Hold them for you.
No, thanks. It's all right. I like holding them.
Destroying them.
I'm not destroying them.
Okay.
And so, what was I saying? And so, yeah, this is the third instalment, and I absolutely loved it. I was a bit confused at the beginning why there weren't many interactions between the POVs, which I thought was George R. R. Martin's strong point. And then 250 pages in, it just kicked off. And then for the next 1,000 pages, which is, because this is 1,344 pages, it's a chunky book, and I'm glad it is. I wish there were even more, because there was revelation after revelation, surprise after surprise, backstab after backstab, and I was just swept along in this crazy journey that it just went at a breakneck pace suddenly after all this building up, and then George R. R. Martin just reaped the rewards of what he has sown for 2 and a bit books, and it was absolutely extraordinary. And the second half of A Storm of Swords is probably the best section of any A Song of Ice and Fire book I've read so far. And A Clash of Kings was my favourite book of 2022. So that says how highly I rate A Storm of Swords.
Very nice.
Absolutely loved it.
The first book I read was The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy. So this is book 2 of the Border trilogy. And so All the Pretty Horses is focused with one character. The Crossing is focused with a different character, same time period in a different place, but kind of same southern states of America as well as Mexico. And then the third book is with both of those characters in. So I've just read book 1, and in December I read book 2. The Crossing is fantastic. I preferred it a lot more over All the Pretty Horses. All the Pretty Horses are kind of a stripped back romance at the heart of it, at the core of it, I think. And then it turns into a sort of neo-western towards the end, with a typical kind of outlaw kind of view upon it. But Cormac McCarthy writes in such a beautiful way. The Crossing is a metaphor for many different crossings that we have in our life. Sometimes they're literal crossings between the borders, other times they're crossing from life to death, and Cormac McCarthy covers all of those crossings, and it is absolutely fantastic. His writing is beautiful. I love the first section of the book where the main character, the boy, he rescues a wolf, and it is just beautiful writing. It's breathtaking, and it really does take you on an amazing journey.
Next up, I'm going to talk about All Things Wise and Wonderful by James Herriot, the second of his autobiographies, which is basically a love letter to Derby, the Yorkshire Dales. Derby is a village in the Yorkshire Dales. Probably most people won't know that, only if you've read the book, basically, or if you live there. Let us know if you do. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about people like if they live there.
Yeah, exactly.
If it has changed much.
Wow, I imagine it has. Well, this was written while he was talking about the 1930s, so nearly 100 years ago now. But anyway, so this is talking about him being a vet in Derby, as I think this was written in the 60s, so reflecting, and is quite reminiscent, and this is during a build-up to World War II as well, and of course it's a true story, autobiographical, so it's about people going off, and it's quite poignant, it's quite powerful, and it is still very light-hearted, and there's a lot of hilarious scenes, but unlike the first one, it is also tinged with kind of that sense of dread as well, and you know where this is going, that kind of foreshadowing, and as I said, you know what is going to happen. But it's still got all those brilliant elements from number 1, but those serious tones come into play as well. And I thought this was brilliantly written, and it's just very powerful and very moving and emotional, because it feels very raw and authentic and honest. And so yeah, I highly recommend these books. Recommend these books if you want a palate cleanser.
Yeah, they're wonderful books, and they really do cleanse your palate.
And next I have another book I listened to on Audible, and this is non-fiction called Persian Fire by Tom Holland. So I went into this thinking it would be more about the Persian Empire, the rise of the Persian Empire, and kind of looking from their perspective.
Title, to be fair.
So I did not quite click with this, but it's my fault because basically I went off the title and not the blurb.
Different expectations.
Exactly. So this is more basically just a overview of the Greco-Persian conflict, which of course includes like Thermopylae, Salamis, Marathon, those conflicts. But over half of the book is looking at it from the perspective of the Greek states, and that's something I've read quite a bit of non-fiction about as well as fiction. And so, whilst it would be I highly recommend this to people who are not familiar with the conflict. I wouldn't to those who know a lot about it because it doesn't really go into detail. As I said, it's an overview, and it just wasn't what I was looking for. Sadly, it was very well written. I'll definitely try out some more Tom Holland because it showed that he's very good at what he does, and of course, he's known for his non-fiction. But it just wasn't what I was looking for, sadly, but still one that I would recommend.
And another one for me was Open Water by Caleb Nelson, and this is it's an award-winning book that is very powerful, and it's very I think it's quite iconic now, really, and it has got a big cult following behind it. And it is a modernist love story, really, about two characters spending time with each other, and it is very reminiscent of normal people, but very much in its own style, in Caleb Nelson's own prose style, and in his own way of writing, which is absolutely beautiful. He's a very poetic writer, and whatever he was writing about, whether it was just the way that the characters spent their day, the way they connected with someone, the way that they were thinking about from the past, or very philosophical kind of passages, it was all very well written. I really enjoyed it, and it was full of emotion as well. There was lots of emotion. And it's funny, sometimes with modern poetry kind of style writing, I don't really click with it. Sometimes it just feels a bit off to me. But at other times, it's very fluid and easy to read and very relatable and accessible as well. And that is Caleb Nelson's style. It's very accessible and it's beautiful and very poignant as well. And it is, it's a very short, it's about 150 pages, maybe even less.
You could do it in a sitting if you're dedicated.
You could do it in a sitting if you wanted to read over a couple of hours or every few hours. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really nice book as well, but it also had that kind of emotional impact on me. So it definitely made me think quite a lot as I was reading it. But it's a great debut as well by Caleb Nelson. It's his first book, and he just has a wonderful writing voice.
Very nice. And going back to me and my reads, I read Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. This is indie published book, one of his War Eternal series. And so this is about a girl called Ascara, who I believe she's 14 or 15. She's a sorceress, and she fights on the losing side. Her side loses. She's stripped of her sorcery and thrown into somewhere called the Pit, which you can imagine it's a big hole in the ground, basically. And she's thrown into it amongst a load of criminals, murderers, thieves, other people who fought in the war, those who have... what's it called?
Veterans?
No, when you leave the army, when you're not meant to. Deserters! And not the food. That was the worst joke I think I've ever told.
Have you got any deserters?
And this is a great premise. I really enjoyed it. And it went in a very different direction from what I was expecting, where Rob J. Hayes is not afraid. He's a very confident writer. And he, as I said, he's not afraid to subvert your expectations a bit. And that's what I love, especially in the fantasy genre. I love to see it taken in a new direction, somewhere fresh. And Rob J. Hayes definitely did that with Along the Razor's Edge. So another great read. December was such a good reading month.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I only read 4 books, but this is a great book that I'm about to talk about. Blood and Thunder by Hampton Sides. This is a non-fiction about the Navajo Nation, as well as Kit Carson, the famous mountain man, set in the 19th century in Western America. And it is a story of how America was formed, really, what America we know as it today. And it is a fantastic book. I absolutely love this non-fiction. Hampton Sides writes with such fluidity, as well as he incorporates these fantastic anecdotes all the way through, and he has a really great grasp of how to write to engage a reader. It didn't feel like a non-fiction. It felt so visceral and engaging. What I loved about it was all the multiple timelines that Hampton Sides was covering. He was covering the famous mountain man Kit Carson, who lived probably one of the most extraordinary lives ever. No wonder he's such an iconic figure of American history. He also covers the Navajo Nation, which are a Native American nation, and the way that they lived. And he really dives into their culture and the way that they lived and the way they explored life. And he does such a good job of that. He's not like a classic kind of white historian who's just washing it and not really interested in the way they lived and disregarding them as savages, which is unfortunately what lots of books portray Native American cultures as. But he really did show a lot of respect in writing it, and I really enjoyed how he wrote about the Navajo Nation. He also covered many important events of American history, and I just think Blood and Thunder, one of the best non-fiction books you can read about Native American culture as well as the forming of modern America, and I think it's a really important read. I began the year with reading Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown, which is absolutely breathtaking, and Blood and Thunder was in a similar vein.
Very nice. That's one that you've been talking about a lot. Yeah. Was it on your... It was just missed your...
Just missed out my top 10 because of
Bury My Heart
Wounded Knee.
But anyway, next up I have 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, and this is one following that kind of revival of the Greek retelling, the Greek myths, and this is a Trojan retelling, and it's one of those as well that is putting women at the centre of the myths, where often they're pushed to the periphery and they are overlooked far too often. And so Pat Barker with The Silence of the Gales and the Women of Troy, Jennifer Saint with Ariadne and Electra, Madeline Miller with Circe, however you say it, and then 1,000 Ships, Natalie Haynes. I'm loving this kind of re-engaging with the Greek myths, the Greek retellings, but putting these women who they play such major roles, but they're just, as I said, overlooked and simplified. And so it's really adding a fresh perspective to what can seem quite dry in so many retellings. But of course, as I said, adding that new fresh lens and looking at it from a different perspective is really interesting. I'd say 1,000 Ships, the prose is absolutely brilliant, really engaging the authorial voice. It was strange, the first quarter to a third, I thought the tone did not really fluctuate at all, which I was really enjoying the writing, I was engaged, but I wasn't loving it because of that. But then it was strange, it just suddenly, it wasn't a gradual change of getting into the story, it was just sudden, and then I was immersed, there was fluctuating emotions, we really understood these characters, and yeah, it just got brilliant from then on. So it's a book of two tales, because a book of 3/3, 2 good, 1 bad. But it was really great, and one that I'd highly recommend as a standalone. And I love how it's got a very fragmented storyline and the timelines as well, where you're jumping from one perspective to another. One chapter is dedicated to each person, but then there's a few that you come back to throughout the story, such as Penelope, who her stories are told in epistolary form, her writing letters to Odysseus, which is a great idea, seeing how kind of her own opinion and her narrative is changing over time as Odysseus has gone, not only for the duration of the Trojan War, which I believe was 10 years, but then the period after where he's going on all these adventures which everyone is loving, really loving reciting across the land, and what we hear now in the Odyssey. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. As I said, it's a bit like I think I said in my January TBR video about the Justice of Kings. Maybe if you're not clicking with the first 2 or 3 chapters, I urge you to carry on beyond that, because I'd say that the beginning is the weakest bit, but still really good.
Sure. And the last book for me is one of the most breathtaking books I have ever read. Please take note that Ellen Harper's The Wolf Den series is a just fantastic feat of literature. I think The House with the Golden Door, it was just one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. Now, it covers the story of Amara, who is forced to work as a sex slave in a brothel. And her story is just so heartbreaking. L.D. Harper writes with just such clarity as well as such confidence that she is able to tackle these really deep themes and these horrifying moments between characters with such gravitas. She writes with such an amazing voice, and she really does cover such a wide breadth of human emotion. And, you know, this book had no swords in, and I absolutely adored it. I think there's a couple of swords in Gladiator Fighter 2, but I adored it. You know, I really think this is a book that so many people should read. The Wolf Den is amazing. This book just blew so many other books I read out of the water. It was my number 2 book of the read, my number 2 read of the year, and it was just fantastic. Amara's story continues to grow, and you really, really feel the tension growing with each page. And at times, I just really didn't want to turn, and I didn't want to read anymore because I just couldn't bear it. But then I had to, because it's just like watching some terrible disaster, isn't it? You just have to watch the mountain crumble. Yeah, exactly. The House on the Golden Door is just a fantastic book, and I really recommend it to anyone who loves historical fiction. It is set in the 1st century AD, and it is set in Pompeii as well. So what more we want to read about Roman culture as well, but from the tale of a woman who has has a very interesting past, but she also has a very unfortunate present day, and it's a fantastic read.
And also, the finale is released in 2023.
Yes, The Temple of Fortuna will be released this year, so definitely, if you're going to read the Wolf Den series, go read it now.
Very nice. And now the last one I'll be talking about it was my first or second favourite read of 2022. It changes every 10 minutes, I can't decide. But probably now I'd settle on. I think in the video when we recorded it, I said it's my second favourite, but now I'd probably say it's my favourite read of 2022.
Well,
changes so quickly.
Disrespected.
How is it disrespected? So you disrespected The House of the Golden Door, putting it as your second favourite read?
No, but this is Boudicca.
This is Dreaming the Eagle. Spoiling it before it's on the page. This is Dreaming the Eagle, book 1 of Boudicca by Amanda Scott, the Boudicca Quartet. And if this has got a bit of like the Malice feel in The Faith and the Fallen, doesn't it? Where it's that coming of age Bildungsroman, and you actually have some happier moments.
Yeah.
This is the building where you know the whole time things are going to go bad, things are going to get more epic and terrible and tragic, and you realise you just want life to stay small and minimal and just accompanying them in this slice of life. Because initially it is slice of life, isn't it? And this is set in the stages where the Roman Empire were about to assert their dominance over Britain, but we follow two perspectives, Boudicca and Ban, and it's, as I said, a Bildungsroman and coming of age story with them, and what characters they are. This is one of the best character driven books I've ever not written. One of the best character driven books I've ever read.
I would have, I don't know, you would be God.
Simple as that. But yeah, this Dream the Eagle is absolutely incredible. I highly recommend it to everyone. Ed's been raving about it all 2022, and just as 2023 rolls in, I'm joining the bandwagon. I'm going to carry on that torch for 2023.
I've macheted the path.
Thank you, Ed. I do owe you.
Yeah.
You and Papa Gwyn.
Boudicca is amazing. I think if you're a fantasy fan, you love Robin Hobb, or you love Papa Gwyn, or you love David Gemmell, or you love Tolkien, or you love pretty much anyone.
If you love reading,
love Boudicca, because there's so much emotion and heart in it.
Yeah, it's one of those that I think transcends genre, and people of any reading taste can really go and enjoy it. It's a bit like I'd say
transcends genre. Oh, that's nice.
I think I've read it in a review somewhere, and I was like, oh, that's nice.
Say in your review.
In my review, yeah.
Check out.
So you're saying just steal things and just don't acknowledge their.
It's called magpieing. You borrow it.
Borrowing. I will return it at some point. But anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. They are the books that we read in December, and it was a great reading month for me. There's a few that, such as Persian Fire, which I was expecting something different, but it's still enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to know that if I kind of want to return and have an overview of the Greco-Persian Wars, then I will go to that. Exactly.
Yeah, I would like to read more Tom Holland, and it's a great month for me. Even though I read 4 books, which is a little bit below par for me, I pretty much loved every single book. So thank you very much for watching.
Whoa! What was our book of the month? It's pretty simple from what we said, isn't it?
Obviously, House of the Golden Door.
Do you want to pick it up? And I'll put mine up. It's the last 2 that we talked about.
Book of the month, House of the Golden Door. Book of the month, Boudicca.
Dreaming the Eagle.
Is the way, in the words of Pascal. What's his name? From The Mandalorian. I should just say The Mandalorian, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
The Viper.
Or the Viper, yeah.
The Viper.
But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Now we say it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Let us know if you've read any of these books, what you read in December, and what is on your TBR for early 2023. Yeah. But as I said, thank you so much for watching. Truth and Courage, The Brothers Gwyn.
Truth and Courage, happy reading, The Brothers Gwyn.